Welcome to the real journey of the entrepreneur. The journey of any entrepreneur begins with a decision, then writing down your vision, then the execution of that vision. It is not for the faint of heart. It is for those who understand how powerful your mind is and that you can truly create the life that you deserve. It does require a unique formula that includes belief in yourself, a lot of consistency, connecting with an OG, a lot of tears, missing out on a few events and things, and taking a whole lot of risks that will allow you to see your vision and dream come to pass. This journey of the entrepreneur is from the perspective of a wonderful mother, a business owner, whose goal is to break generational barriers and normalize the process of wealth building and financial wellness through entrepreneurship, all while creating a social and give back along the way. I am sharing this journey with you and invite you to share this process with me. Let's do this together. It's my own, but you have to feel comfortable to own it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I will always support you.
Thank you.
Well, greetings, good people. Greetings, greetings, greetings. I am so excited to have you join us for another episode of The Real Journey of Entrepreneurship. My name is Anita Pierce, and I'm the founder and CEO of 11375, where we are interested in supporting small businesses with resources. And this conversation today is absolutely no different. I can tell you that one of the things that I'm learning, I am in this space as a full-time entrepreneur, that, as I mentioned during my intro, it is not for the faint of heart. But also what I'm learning is that you have to have tools and resources to manage your overall wellness. It is imperative. It's important because you are the one that's driving the creativity within your business, and you need to be okay from your point, your standard. But I am not a licensed therapist, but I do have experience with working with those who can provide us with the tools and resources that we need. And my next guest is one of them, one of the industry leaders that is focusing specifically on therapy for the culture. Jasmine Santiago has a wealth of experience and knowledge, but also is the founder and CEO of Therapy for the Culture. And I'm excited for this conversation because this is one that I will believe will be a space of safety and one where we can have conversations that will help us with the tools that we need as business owners. And so, on that note, I'm going to welcome one of the members of the illustrious cohort 40 from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. We are the best cohort. I will say that without a doubt. I'm saying it. No one else has to say it. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Anita. Pleasure to be here. Loved the intro.
Love to have you here. Excited for this conversation. So, Jasmine, I'm going to start with the basics. Who are you? How did you get started? And what is not in your bio that we just don't know? Do tell.
So I'm Jasmine Santiago, Atande, hyphenated. My journey really began with wanting to support and help in spaces and communities that looked like Black, Indigenous people of color, including Latinos and Latinas. And it really started from knowing that I myself at some point needed some of that support. And when I sought that support, there wasn't people who looked like me in those spaces. So understanding inner culture, understanding the ways in which we kind of have different worldviews. I wanted to be able to contribute and break. I really appreciated how you talked about breaking generational curses. Likewise. And so I sought to do that in therapy. That was the area I was going to focus on. And that is just kind of where I've built my experience at in terms of being the CEO and founder of Therapy for the Culture. So it's a private practice. And the reason that I founded that was to really target the population that I wanted to support and to train other clinicians to be prepared to support this population. And things that might not be in my bio is the many roles and identities outside of the professional hat, right? Like the wife, the daughter, the best friend, the caregiver, and what those different roles comprise of, and how that equally plays a part in balancing as we think about being an entrepreneur, because being an entrepreneur doesn't stop these other roles.
Even though we would like it to.
No, it don't.
And so transitioning to this space, therapy for the culture, I'm actually going to share your website as we are talking. Um, Therapy that over invests in understanding your vision, your experience in culture. Um, I can just share that I have had experiences with a therapist. And during the time that I first started this process, it was one where I didn't really know that there were um, folks out there that looked like me, and that can share and understand within the culture. How do you manage that? When you are, I'll start with like seeing clients, or even from training us, because there is a vetting process that I now know of exists. Um, you mind sharing that, just a little bit of that?
Yeah, it is first starts with intention on my end, right? Like having to be aware of the biases, so undoing and dismantling some of the systemic barriers and issues that exist. So like you see on my website, there's these different cultural approaches. So we have relational cultural therapy, intersectionality, multi-systemic family therapy. A lot of times what we hear about in mainstream just support and help, and throughout my education, a lot of what was highlighted was more Western approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy. We learn a lot of approaches that were founded and supported by white theorists. And again, that's not to invalidate some of its credibility, but it doesn't truly necessarily support and look at the ways in which race, ethnicity, gender, affectional orientation, skin color, right? Like colorism, the different curses and systemic issues that have happened in our own communities. That wasn't really being supported. And so when I got to my doctorate level, and I had phenomenal, it was the first time I really had like clinicians, counselor educators who were Black and brown and just came in with a wealth of knowledge and experience and highly challenged us. And I realized I wanted to be able to not only level up and get to a space of being able to provide quality work to clients, but I also wanted to be able to support so many other clinicians in doing the same. For some reason or another, I think leadership has just been something that has been kind of like in the background. I haven't formally taken on positions, but there have been a lot of roles I've taken lead in. And so that was one of them. I've trained clients, or not clients, but clinicians that worked with me along other programs and other organizations that were not my own. And then when I realized that that was just something, I was gifted with the ability to be able to be, to do, I wanted to be able to really expand on that in my own space. So my intention is important. My training is important. And then on top of that, really being intentional on staying on top of that, staying current.
So I don't want that to slip by. You said that you're in a doctoral program, or did you finish? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so great question. I'm in my last stages of the doctoral program. I'm all but dissertation, so I'm finishing the dissertation. And that's been a pride and point of really pushing myself. I think that people with credentials have to be at the table to be able to make changes and to support and show up and be able to have credibility to what we speak to and to what we want to be able to create for our communities. So that was a really huge reason why I pursued the PhD.
So let's pause and clap that up, because you know, I yay, that's all I'm gonna say. Yay, congratulations, because I don't want that to be like a something that I know that you're working into it, but it makes me super proud to know that you are investing into yourself that will eventually help the community as a whole. So congratulations. Now, next question. Deals with this space of, so you have this practice. You are helping to shape the community of clinicians, right? So the folks who are entrepreneurs, or just anyone who comes into your practice, how do I say this? Where do they begin the process if someone has never experienced a therapist? What does that experience look like? What questions should we be asking? How do we vet the appropriate person who will help to provide us with tools to help us heal?
That's a great question. So the other piece that on the website it offers is a consultation. And the reason we do that is for this very reason, because a lot of times it's all the way at the top.
Okay.
But and then there's my team at the bottom. But at the top, the very top, you'll see it says free consultation, right? And then right below under the culture, it says book a complimentary consultation. These are such important features because a lot of times you have therapists that are already ready to kind of get the ball rolling and want to start therapy. And the problem that a lot of times clients find is they're starting and they don't really know what to expect out of therapy, or they've had therapists in the past that they didn't have a great experience, or maybe they had a wonderful experience and for whatever reason, the therapist fell out of insurance, or like they just terminated, or maybe they moved out of state, and so they try to start new and they don't really know where to start. So I would first try to seek if there's a consultation. If they don't offer consultations, you're probably not going to want to immediately jump into something without fielding out some questions. The other things that I think are really important for a few different reasons, you want to see what type of approaches they provide. So that might be on their website. That may be a question that you ask them, like, what type of approach do you use with clients that are, let's say I'm coming in to deal with anxiety, or I'm coming in and I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur, I have multiple roles. I need to be able to talk with somebody who's going to kind of help me feel grounded or help me feel like I can just push through some of this. Have you worked with anybody else like me that has been in my situation or that has had some similar circumstances? Because you want to get a sense of like, am I the first that's coming in through these doors with these particular stressors? The second is asking like, how do you approach these type of stressors? So again, on my website, you see there's different types of focuses, right? That's not just for me, but also my team. My team has different strengths as well. So these are areas where it's really helpful to talk to a therapist and get an idea of what type of work are they doing? Is it going to be more talk therapy? Some clients come in or in consultations and they already know, like, I want to do homeworks and I want to do talk therapy, but I also need to be able to have some tools to walk away with. And I think that's the biggest thing is, are we just going to process? And so at our practice, we're really big on adding value. So it's not just talking about the thing, but you need to be able to at some point remove us from the picture. And we talk about it like a toolbox. What's your toolbox look like? So for us, we have homeworks, we have process therapy, we do a lot of mindfulness. We talk about being able to bring in different resources. Some of the resources are our own and we provide them to clients as a courtesy because they're with our practice. So you want to know a little bit about what the layout looks like in terms of what they're going to do with you. And last and most important, how is this being funded? So some clients are going to come in with insurance and some are going to pay out of pocket. And if you're going to pay out of pocket, you want to know, how do they assess what that payment is? Some therapists are going to have a flat fee. Others might have a sliding scale. Depending on where you are in your income, they may have a particular fee that is associated with that income. The last is if they are in insurance, right? So as a courtesy, whenever we have clients that come through, we will verify their insurance from them. The last thing I want to do is have clients who are surprised with bills that they didn't anticipate. So that means we let you know what your deductible is, if you have one, a copayment. All of that is done on the back end before we even schedule you. So that's a few things you want to know. Again, what is their, like, have they worked with anybody in similar stressors or situations? What is their approach? Are they in network or out of network? You also want to ask them if there's going, like, what's the time length? Do they plan to see you for 50 minutes, 55 minutes to an hour? Are they going to lock in a certain time with you? Is this going to be my time every week? You also want to, the last thing I'll say, you also want to ask them, like, what is their policies, their practice policies? Like, is there any no-show fees, any late cancellations? Those are little tiny things that you don't want to be surprised with as an entrepreneur. You want to really be intentional on knowing, like, oh, if I can't show up to Jasmine's appointment, I know there's a likelihood I'm going to have a no-show fee, right? So sometimes you have therapists that are more flexible than others.
Okay. So I'm going to dive in um, a couple of ways, right? So you mentioned, you know, the initial does require you to do some research. You still need help and support, but you still have to go through a vetting process to ensure that, this specific um, agency is the one that you want to work with going forward. I like the fact that you talked about that is your process. Having and taking advantage of the consultation. Most of us, I think, may be afraid of putting free consultations on their website, but this also serves, as I heard, as a vetting mechanism for you as the client, and becoming comfortable with the person or the team that is going to help you through your healing. So that's a beautiful approach, and the way you explained it makes a lot more sense than just seeing something on the site that says a consultation. But I'm doing it for a reason, because I need to heal and really understand whether this is a match for me in my process. The other thing that you mentioned, that often comes up is about your approach as a business owner. And I want to really talk through that, because, what I see, right, oftentimes that there are individuals within the health and wellness space that are not really thoughtful about their process. What does that mean for the client to start? In this specific instance, you shared, a mechanism for us to do vetting, right? Because it's important. But then the other thing that I heard you mention is about, really understanding your approaches. My follow up question is, how did you decide which approaches that you were going to use within your specific practice?
That's a great question. It's partly areas that I've been really passionate about. So, like relational cultural therapy. When I'm on the phone with my clients, I'm really intentional on letting them know, as a practice in how I train clinicians that work with me and with the clients, we're going to take a cultural approach. So that means we're not just focused on your identities, right? Like, who's Anita? What is Anita's background? And what is Anita's identities? Not just as like a mother, a wife, Black woman, an entrepreneur, but also like, what are the identities of those people around you? Because that's also going to come into how you're interacting, your environment, the experiences. So that's important. And so relational cultural therapy is recognizing intersectionality is recognizing all those pieces, which is one approach, but relational cultural therapy is also recognizing the relationship between clinician and client is also going to mirror some of that sometimes. So we don't operate in a vacuum. And a lot of what I was really passionate about learning was, how do I bring in some authenticity as a clinician? I think a lot of times what I saw trained to me and what I saw in other spaces with therapists was, you didn't really get a sense of who that therapist was. And appropriately so, a large amount of time is going to be dedicated to my client. But I'm not going to obscure and forget that I have identities too, right? Like, how does my own biases and identities show up in this space? So I really want to be intentional on recognizing and doing the work there. So that's where you see some of the frameworks. With multi-systemic therapy, I'm also keeping in mind the different moving parts of those identities in your family and the lineage and these generations, that some that we're not seeing, some that have been, long before, and that you've been shared bits and pieces of information. And then coming back to that relational cultural therapy part is, how do I embrace all of that in the session and now start to provide, this might be the first safe space a Black or brown person has had in their life. Or this might be the first time that somebody in a position of power and authority, and I use air quotes intentionally because the way I train my clinicians is that we are collaborative with our clients. I'm not the expert here. You know your life, you know you well. I'm going to be your co-pilot. And I always say that to the clinicians that I train and to my clients. And ultimately, you're going to drive the vehicle. But as your co-pilot, taking relational cultural therapy into account, I'm going to point out these warning signs to you. I'm going to point out, like, hey, this sounds like it might be coming from childhood. This sounds like it might be coming from somebody else close to you. What about our own dynamic and modeling some of that? And sometimes I don't directly explicitly say this, but I start to have conversations around teaching. I start to have conversations around boundaries. We start to have conversation about how to have these communication approaches with folks and people that are close to us that have never heard some of this language. And so we model that and we have that dialogue in our own space in therapy. So these different approaches came up because I wanted to use theories that were grounded in being able to support communities of color that didn't disenfranchise them or didn't just label them with different diagnoses. I wanted to be able to say, some of this has nothing to do with just you, it's genetic. Some of this has to do with these generational lineage curses that have just been continued and that have been perpetuated. So, how do we honor that? And so that's where some of these frameworks came from.
Mm. Oh, Jasmine, you see, this is it's good stuff. So you made this decision. I want to talk back about, when you made the decision to go into this space, right, as an entrepreneur. What were some of your costs that were associated with what you're doing? Because, you know, you are an entrepreneur and you have all these comma ands. What did that look like for you starting out?
Yeah. So I started right when the pandemic hit. My own business, right? I should say I've been doing therapy and a therapist for over several years. So my private practice wasn't the first stop. I will highlight that and say that's not where you want to immediately dive into. Not because you can't, but just because there's so many landmines that you kind of need to have experience to be able to weather the storm on. So
Mm,
I had already worked at different private practices before. There was some things that I learned that was helpful. There was some things that I learned that were not helpful, and I took from both. I realized what are the things I don't want to perpetuate. Some private practices that operate very much like a business, meaning you don't really feel like there is a care or concern to the client because they churn it out and they want to get the numbers in. And
mm,
so, on the one hand, that's important, right, from a business entrepreneur perspective. But on the other hand, where's the humanity piece? Where's the bit of being able to be flexible? How are you giving back? What does that process look like for being able to be the human in this, that humanitarian helper in us? So I learned in different roles in different organizations. I also worked at spaces that were nonprofit and for profit. So I learned a little bit about how therapy looked in these different spaces. Come COVID, I had realized like there was just a gap. There was a gap in, now we're in a highly saturated market. Now we have BetterHelp and just a lot of online therapists, and there's so much. And on the one hand, that's great. That means there's a lot of options for folks. On the other hand, just because you could start a website doesn't mean you're necessarily a great qualified credentialed therapist. And I think that's really hard to separate because some people they think very highly of themselves, and that is phenomenal, but they don't have the experience and credibility to back it up. So I say all that to say, COVID, this wasn't the case yet. And so I had decided, and my husband also at the time, we weren't married yet, but he was really kind of like great with envisioning. He's an entrepreneur himself. I'm sure he's going to come at some point on the series and be on the show. But he encouraged me to like, why don't you start your own private practice? And that had always been a thought, but it
mm,
was something I considered doing after I finished my PhD. So for me, it was going to be teaching, training, clinicians. That was going to be the goal. And then small private practice on the side. You know what they say, right? We have life plans and then there's God.
right.
So I saw the need, I jumped in. The financial costs, there were some things that I had to anticipate. I had to assume I'm not going to immediately make money from this. Now, thankfully, I had clients that wanted to work with me and just have known me in different spaces, in different places that I've worked. There was some costs associated with having to figure out, like, how do I get paneled with insurances? How do I do this billing thing? Like, this is, as we wear many hats, you have to learn what to let go of. And
Mm,
sometimes the cost of letting go of that, you have to be able to weather that cost. And so there was costs on a billing team. There was costs on getting the website up and running and figuring out like I need a good website. And the one it looks like now is not what it looked like when I first, went into business, but that took time to figure out. It was also money on being able to figure out the legal components.
mm,
So like, do I do an LLC? Do I do an S Corp? What names are already taken and things of that nature. It was also important. And these are some things I stumbled on, right? Like I didn't know all of this. And so along the ways there were also incurred costs that I was like, dang, I didn't know that then, but you find out. And I
mhm,
think the last thing I'll say is don't let go of what is bringing in income if you can. Like the best case scenario is you build something to a point where you can step into it a little bit more intentionally. But if you can't, then there needs to be a bit of a nest egg. There needs to be a bit of a cushion. And if you don't have that little bit of cushion from whatever other job you had, then you got to be patient with yourself. And you've got to know you're going to feel those strains a lot more, because the financial costs between building website credibility, whatever legal fees you may incur to try and just get things up and going. And, the government is always going to take its piece of the pie. And then whatever other, ways, whether it's marketing or whether it's hiring a particular agency or company to do a vital piece. For me, it was billing, because that's the heart of what gets insurances claims paid. So those were some of the areas that financially I had to anticipate, some areas that like tripped me up, and some ways that I just learned by failing a little bit.
I receive all of that. And starting back with the statement, failing and learning and continuing to go. But also understanding that there were things that you had to learn on the job while you were creating this. And this is the truth. And almost at the heart of what we do as learning through this thing that we are creating. Um, most of us would love to say that we are overnight success. I am not, Jasmine is not, but we do come into this space with our experiences from other areas, whether we worked at other places, we volunteered, whatever spaces are now combined into this creation that we are looking to make impact and deep waves through. Jasmine, I really appreciate you breaking down the, just things like billing, understanding how you are going to um, your approach in working with clients. Do you only work with individuals, or is it, I know you mentioned clinicians, but is it corporations that you work with as well? What does your clients look like? Or who are your clients? What do they look
Yeah, so it is a wide array of so I have individuals, I have couples, there are families, I've got CEOs, I've got entrepreneurs, I've got folks who work for government agencies or high profile people that they are supporting, or they are a particular vital role to. So it's a little bit of everywhere and everyone that is either Black, Indigenous, a person of color, a Latina, Latino, Latinx folk. So there is the individual that just wants support. There is the entrepreneur, CEO, that wants support. I don't work with corporations as of yet. That is on 2024's, 2025's expansion. But I should say I do a lot of speaking and engaging and just panels and different things of that nature. But in terms of just being able to do things a little bit more intentionally, like training, so I'm working in that direction and building that out. But it is anywhere from the family to the couples to the individual to the business owner themselves.
So there you have it, Jasmine. As we wrap up for today, you provided a vast, um, you know, opportunity for us to learn about some best practices. Are there any final tips for this conversation that you would offer for the entrepreneur, or just in general for those who will be listening or watching this episode?
Yeah, I really, and I think it's goes needless to say with my profession, right? I would really highly encourage getting a good therapist, like getting a therapist that can ride with you, that can talk with you, that is either has or is familiar with a CEO or business entrepreneur themselves, because there is a support that we lack in our success as we move towards. We think that success only happens when we're finally there. Success is all those little moments before that. Success is being able to get that first paycheck. Success is being able to pitch to your first client. Success is being able to kind of learn some of the things that maybe we don't have a foundation or a template for, or even just finding networking. And having a therapist who, one, is going to help keep your mind right and sharp and support you in the ways of like, we got other things that need attention and are operating in the background, but two, even therapy aside, don't forget to find a community of folks that you can do this with. Because we joked in the beginning, but we come from Goldman Sachs cohort, right? Being able to come from a large group of other CEOs, other entrepreneurs is literally life-saving, because you get to see how many other people have had similar strifes and circumstances and how they've navigated that. So not forgetting to have a community, that social capital is vital. That would be the last thing I want to highlight.
Okay, awesome. So Jasmine, this was amazing. I look forward to having you back again as your time schedules. But I wanted to also just share, as I was taking notes, just have highly encouraged to have in your toolbox as a therapist, as one of those things, and also finding a community of like minded, because social capital is really key and critical for the success of life. We just happen to be entrepreneurs, but for the success, as to what Jasmine has mentioned, is critical for our overall well being and success. So, friends, family, therapy for the culture. This is the website I am populating on therapyfortheculturellc.com. I'm also going to share again a visual of the website so that you can see that there is a free consultation that you have available. Don't hesitate to take advantage of vetting someone specifically if the needs are there for you. But I also would like to plug, don't be spammy or being don't do that to the folks who are looking to help, to be supportive. They are invested in your success, and you have to believe that 100%. And Jasmine, thank you.
Thank you.
But before you go, Jasmine, I got some rapid questions for you. These are one word. Always real fun.
Okay.
So, you're a native New Yorker.
New Jersey.
Okay, so what's your favorite city in New Jersey?
It's got to be Jersey City. Good food, close to the city if I want to get in there, and diverse, very diverse.
Okay. Jersey in the house. So, do you have an appreciation for ice cream or smoothies these days?
Ice cream. Definitely ice cream. It's my guilty pleasure. I liked chocolate. I like dulce de leche. Anything that's caramelly.
Mm, like my husband, the caramel stuff. Yeah. Shoes, high heel shoes or sneakers these days? What's your preference?
Mm, I will always say high heel shoes, even though it's sneakers these days, but I will always say high heel shoes.
That is the jam. And in 3 years, 3 years, just three, therapy for the culture, what is the impact that you're looking to make?
Hiring and training more clinicians to support more clients. And as I mentioned earlier, being able to move towards supporting not just people, but the organizations themselves.
Jasmine, thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This is amazing. And again, Therapy for the Culture, LLC.com. Jasmine's company is on social media. So check out Therapy for the Culture, and don't be spammy. Be responsible. Thank you, Jasmine. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Anita. Always a pleasure. Happy to come back anytime.
All right, awesome. Okay, friends. So there you have it. There you have it. Therapy for the culture. We all need support. And through Therapy for the Culture, this is just one avenue where we can gain the resources are needed. Wanted to just share as I was taking notes, and hope that you were too. Jasmine is a seasoned professional and provided some very realistic tools that we can have need for ourselves when we are out there searching for assistance and help. The consultations, take advantage of them. In this specific instance, there is a free 15-minute consultation that is offered, but it helps us to understand the approach of the organization that we're looking to work with. We can inquire and ask questions about how they work with each client. Am I the only one that has experienced this? How are you going to fund it? How is it funded? What is the fee assessment? Is it a sliding scale? What is the timeline that you are going to be working with this specific therapist? And what's the practice policy? And I love the fact that Jasmine mentioned the fact that sometimes, when you're going through your process of creating a business, it's like, do I bill for no shows? Like, how does that work? And the answer in this specific case is based upon the organization's policy that they developed. But you should also respect their time anyway. But it's in also just benefiting from the fact that you have someone who is as educated and has the experience to help you heal through your process. So keep that in mind when you are looking to source out a therapist for your overall well-being. And I won't let you leave with just about providing a different resources and information. We're here as well. If you need to reach out at 11375.com. We specialize in a number of different spaces, government contracts, providing resources, because that is why we are here. We understand what it's like to be in business and want to be sure to loop you in to all the tools that you are needed. So I'm so glad you showed up today. And I'm so glad that you are listening and following. Don't forget to like, share, follow us. And guess what? We'll see you again on the next episode soon. Thank you so much for joining the real journey of the entrepreneurship. So long. Welcome to 11375. My name is Anita Pierce, and I am your Chief Experience Officer. At 11375, we offer strategic alignment solutions specific to you and your business goals, and also connecting everything with social impact. So if you are looking for a really amazing organization where we help you to focus your strategy and connecting it with social impact, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are on all the social platforms, and you can contact us at 11375.